Good evening, all, and welcome back to the Shadow Gallery in its full glory. I am your host, James Donnelly, as always, and co-hosting with me tonight is, of course, the lovely Cortana. Actually, she's going to sit this one out, but it's interesting kind of staring at this, essentially blue, transparent hologram, if you will, because she's got a really nice ass. Anyway, so now that I'm done being a pig, time to turn it off. Yeah. So we're back here with the full, as it were, because the computer's back. It's really not that bad now. There's no more whining of the fan since we cleared that out. And really, when you turn on the computer when it first starts up, it does whine like the screen or whatever for like 5-6 minutes at most, and then it dies down. So whatever the fuck those guys were smoking over at Data Doctors, I have no idea, but whatever. So I'm doing this because I just really feel like talking some comics for a while, but not doing, an episode of New Comics, bitches! Just to really talk about one book in particular. One issue of one book in particular, because I didn't get around to doing it last week because there is this, there was obviously this moment where I didn't have the computer, and I've been watching a lot of other people's vlogs out there. I just was watching Matt, Agent 42Q's Wednesday serial from this week, and before that, I was watching Oddfellow's What the Fugue, in which he does talk a lot about DC and a lot about, mostly about DC, but also about Marvel and about some cancellations of some books, one in particular that I'm very, 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 very upset about still. This has just been a really shitty week for me for cancellations, because if you recall back to my year-end wrap-up, one of the things I was kind of stupid in my picks of like best like comic book related films and TV shows. Well, I shouldn't say really stupid, but I think I was right, at least in my top two. But I think could have done some more thinking there. Actually, well, really, Dread 3D is still pretty fucking brilliant. So, but of course, the one thing that I left out was The Walking Dead. The one thing that I did include, that of course isn't technically a comic book, which was Sci-Fi's Alphas, which got canceled this week. They've decided not to renew it. For those of you who did actually watch it, I'm sure that you were fans, especially the second season, because obviously the first season's all about the exposition, all about learning about the characters, and then the second season starts to deal with them in a larger universe. And of course you have this, the kind of, really, if you want to, go to a particular place with it as far as a comic book analog. It's very much the kind of Professor X versus Magneto, where you have Dr. Lee Rosen, talking about, alpha integration and acceptance, and then you have Stanton Parrish, who is talking about alpha superiority. So, I mean, it wasn't new in the sense that it was breaking any new ground as far as storytelling was concerned, but through the eyes of these characters, it was incredibly exciting, it was incredibly involving, and it was incredibly great. And the fact that they shit-canned it, basically, I'm done with sci-fi. Literally, am done. Unless something really, really compelling starts to come out. Because this is the second time that I felt personally wronged by them. One of them much more so than the other. And I'm just going to talk about this for a few minutes, and then I'll get on with the comic that I'm going to talk about. Because I know that you're waiting for that. So, one of my best friends, my dearest friends, who I've known for over 20 years, is someone I went to school with. He was involved in a television program over at Sci-Fi, which was called Outer Space Astronauts. He was, he was one of the creative team. He was one of the actors on the show, and he's, easily like the funniest guy on the program, and he's one of the funniest people and most creative people that I've ever met in my life. This was a show that they kept promising him the moon and the stars. I won't go into the details as to why this was that the show was eventually axed. He made me promise not to. But it was very kind of heartbreaking for me to see one of my best friends kind of get fucked over by, a particular TV studio. Basically, it's all about promises not kept, is what really boils down to, and that's okay. That's one aspect of it. But like I said, I won't get into the others. And now this with Alphas, I mean, it really being the only show that Sci-Fi has brought to bear that had any chance of redeeming the channel's status as a go-to channel for science fiction, for new science fiction. You have your Warehouse 13 and you have your Haven, but you know what? I'm not interested in either of those shows. There's nothing really compelling to me about them. But Alphas was, to me, the only thing that they had going since they, of course, again, it shit-canned Caprica, and after the eventual closing of Battlestar Galactica, which admittedly I think still had at least one more season in it. And maybe if they got that other season, maybe the ending of the show, the final episode, would have been quite so bad. Well, the last hour is just kind of bad. Anyway, so what we're going to talk about here, really. So I mean, that's it for Sci-Fi. I'm done with them because they've jerked me around too much. They did a show, kind of a reboot of The Phantom, a couple years back. They did basically 2-hour episodes, and I was really hoping that was going to go to series because it was really compelling the way that they were telling the story. It was very, very, very in line with what I was thinking about for a potential kind of not reboot but continuation of the story of The Shadow, in which it is actually basically I had a very, very specific idea for a Shadow TV show, and even before that had ever gotten off the ground, even after months upon months upon thinking about it, then I saw this the Phantom show, which I actually own on Blu-ray because they did eventually release it on home video, and when I saw it, I'm like, fuck, it's like literally they stole the ideas right out of my head in a lot of ways. So if you ever get the chance to see that, I do recommend it. It's pretty good storytelling, and it's a really fun reboot of a cool pulp comic character. So yeah, that's it for Sci-Fi. Really, I'm done. I refuse to get fucked over by them anymore because I mean, a spin-off of their biggest show, arguably. Certainly their most acclaimed show that they ever put out. Anyway, so the comic that I want to talk about tonight, not a particular issue per se, but the series itself, and that is Superior Spider-Man #1. Now, for those of you who are really upset by the massive status quo shakeup of Dan Slott's, basically killing of Peter Parker and having Otto Octavius in Peter Parker's body, with his memories, but with also his own memories. Don't fear for too long. I mean, you pretty much knew that already, but well, first of all, don't fear, period, because you can always go and read Ultimate Spider-Man, which doesn't have Peter Parker also, but it's got a really, really, really good protagonist in Miles Morales. So if you miss the jokey, if you miss the fun of a good Spider-Man title, just start reading Ultimate Spider-Man like immediately, because that is a great, great series. And it's one of those, I don't see a lot of people talking about it. You read Spider-Man, but you don't read Ultimate Spider-Man. I can kind of get that. I can kind of go with it for a little while, but it's like, when you start really complaining about how much you miss, the fun coolness of Spider-Man, but you're not reading Ultimate Spider-Man, then you're just missing out. You're missing, just switch. Don't give up on the character, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't give up on Spider-Man. Even if you're giving up on Superior Spider-Man, don't give up on Ultimate Spider-Man, because Ultimate Spider-Man is, and has been since this second volume's inception, has been fantastic. I mean, with all the artists, David Marquez and Sarah Pichelli, they've just done some fantastic artwork on that book. So give it a chance, get it in trade, do whatever you need to do. Just start reading Ultimate Spider-Man. If not only just because it's a really good book, but like I said, if you are really having problems with missing the fun that Spidey can bring, trust me, you will have your faith redeemed with Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, Superior Spider-Man. I don't know if it came out today or if it came out within the last couple days, but there was, on Newsarama, there was a really interesting op-ed in which they wrote about Superior Spider-Man and how it might not be as status quo shattering as Dan Slott claims it to be. Now, of course, we know, I mean, it would seem that to a lot of people, it's felt like a stunt book. They were upset. They were pissed off that, basically just seemed like, well, they're just killing him off just to ramp up readership, to get people interested in Spider-Man again. I don't know if the interest ever went away, but I feel like it was like they wanted to get something that they weren't getting from the regular, that they weren't getting from Peter Parker, so they kind of switched over to, this whole Otto Octavius thing. Now, for those of you who have read Superior Spider-Man #1, obviously we're introduced really for the first time to Octavius as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man, but in this quote-unquote superior way, in which he is facing off against this kind of hack version of the Sinister Six. And he does a lot of there's no mercy in the way that he deals with them. He's very brutal. He's very violent with them. But ultimately, he knows how to beat them, which is keeping with the kind of, because I think the superior part of him being Spider-Man is not necessarily so much to honor Peter Parker's memory, but also to proclaim himself still kind of thinking as a villain, still kind of having the mad scientist mindset, if you will, that he is better, that he is superior to any way that Peter Parker could have ever been Spider-Man. So it's part, it seems like it is part respect, but it's mostly still revenge. Now, and from future solicits, we've seen that we've seen, there's a picture of Spidey with like some of the core Avengers team, and you see the word fired. So it appears that yes, they are firing they are firing Spider-Man from the Avengers. And I think the op-ed that was in Newsarama really hit some interesting notes with the way that they think it's going to go, which is there were a lot of predictions that they made that this is essentially it's almost rewriting a lot of Straczynski's work, particularly the ending, with the One More Day, kind of the reboot of Spider-Man, erasing his and MJ's marriage, so on and so forth. That we are going to that the superior Spider-Man is going to continue to be kind of excessively brutal and not very friendly neighborhood, and he's going to alienate the heroes around him, and he is going to maybe become something of what J. Jonah Jameson, as the editor of the Daily Bugle, always claimed that he was, which is a menace. And that is ultimately where we're going to have Peter Parker step back in. Because, again, those of you who have read Superior Spider-Man, if you haven't, stop reading, stop watching now, because I'm going to give a huge spoiler, is that at the very end of the book, he is about to deliver a killing blow to, Spidey is going to deliver a killing blow to one of the Secret Six that he's already basically pounded into jelly, and he's stopped by this kind of phantom hand, and this phantom hand belongs to Peter Parker. Peter Parker is in this, the art by Ryan Stegman paints him as this very ethereal, ghost-like figure, and it's meant to kind of be Ock's conscience. Peter's conscience in his own body, still alive. So basically, that was, while I actually kind of admired that part of it, it also made me angry. Because essentially, Slott has already written himself an escape pod. If Superior Spider-Man starts to turn too many people off, he's going to go, he's got a way out immediately. That the dominant side of Peter Parker's soul, whatever you want to call it, can basically retake his own body. So it's a huge escape pod for the series going forward, and I'm pretty upset that he did that in the first issue. I think it's, again, it's like I said, part of me respects the fact that it is kind of ballsy, in the sense that, well, we've just killed Peter Parker, so to, give an idea that we're going to, kind of tease bringing him back so soon seems to grate against the story that he seemed to, kind of tease was being prepared. But how much of a character Peter Parker, the conscience Peter Parker, will play in issues to come is obviously a big question mark, because we're still only at the first issue. But again, like I said, the other part of me, the more significant part of me, is angry that Slott has written himself at this escape hatch that he can go into it, or that the editors can go into and say, you know what, this isn't working out too well. There's too much of a backlash against it. Let's go back and put Peter back in his own body, so they can return to the way it was. So, because, like, there is some really creepy shit that goes on in this issue. And I will speak about one moment in particular where he's having dinner with Mary Jane, and there's this one moment where he's, where his inner monologue is going, and he's talking about how great it is to be young and vital, and and what that brings out in him. And, one of the best things about it is the view, and you have this panel of him just focusing on Mary Jane's breasts. And it's like, okay, we are really entering creep zone here. So, and again, that's something that I admire about it, is because it's challenging, our perception of this character that we've known for 50 years. And, really both characters, that they can, one can be, always so good and always try and do the right thing, and then have someone step in and almost completely undo everything that is beloved about that same character. So I am honestly thinking that the op-ed has raised some very, very, very good points. And I will put the link to that op-ed in this video down there, so that you can see what the hell I'm talking about. Because it is, like I said, I think that it's hit something that I think is really where I believe that this comic is probably going to go from here, is that once we get back to Spidey being kind of hated and feared again by the general populace, that he is going to, that Peter Parker will end up back in the saddle. And he will have to rebuild his reputation from there, to start being Spider-Man again. Or again, this could all be just the big long con as far as, Slott is concerned, because, he may be playing a really long game here and having us, and will continue to have Ock as Spider-Man, or, and then Peter Parker will get, something of his own again, and then, but we're dealing then kind of going back to the Clone Saga and all that kind of bullshit, and we don't want to go back there. It is interesting, is going back to Oddfellows, Travis's discussion about the editorial staff at DC, and how he does believe, as I believe, that they're taking DC in too extreme of a direction as far as focusing on, mainly pushing the big books, and really kind of, or the big creator books, like, Snyder's Batman, and, Jeff Johns's whatever, and, down to Aquaman, and, pushing, Lemire and Snyder, and, basically the people who become you know, the go-to guys as far as I'm concerned for DC. You know, Fialkov is, you know, we knew that he was going to be doing Alpha, you know, for a while now at for Marvel. But, you know, he was also talking a lot about, you know, just some of the really kind of some of the bullshit, basically. You know, it's just really calling them out on a lot of the bullshit they had to say lately. You know, Bob Harris and, you know, kind of, you know, all of the bullshit, you know, revolving around Gail Simone and her firing / rehiring as the writer of Batgirl. And, you know, the shakeups as far as you know, the creative teams of, like, you know, Constantine, which was going to be Robert Venditti, who, you know, has been doing a pretty fantastic job with Exo Manowar, and is just stepping into the driver's seat of Demon Knights. I've not actually read the latest issue yet. But it's that you know, he's no longer going to be doing Constantine, and the writer that they were going to have doing Birds of Prey, who I think is the same writer that's doing the Amethyst comic, is now being replaced by a couple of other people, and they found out basically through the pages of previews by the solicits. So, I mean, that's a really shitty thing to do to your creative staff. Again, I mean, you know, the only reason that people like Jeff Lemire and Scott Snyder have gotten the attention that they deserve is because, you know, DC took a chance on these guys. You know, I mean, these were, you know, Snyder prior to you know, prior to American Vampire, to me, I think had only really done one book that anybody might have read at all, and that was Iron Man Noir, which is a great, you know, that was a great series. I loved it. But I didn't read it until, of course, after a couple of years he'd been working at DC. And, of course, you know, they gave him a shot with writing Detective, and, of course, that worked out brilliantly. You know, they're giving Lemire, you know, all the shots in the world as far as, you know, with you know, he was doing Sweet Tooth, and now he's, you know, that book has ended, but he's, you know, writing Animal Man, and, you know, writing you know, Frankenstein Agent of Shade, and, you know, he wasn't initially writing Justice League Dark, but now he is, and thank God. But you know, it's just the way that, you know, editors kind of they have this, you know, this very puppet mastery hold on the books that they are, you know, that they're pushing in the books that ultimately just kind of get left out in the cold, like I, Vampire. I mean, let's face it. I mean, when did they ever push that book, despite the fact, however, you know, much acclaim it had received, how everybody was raving about this book? You know, IGN, you know, it was on their top 5 of the books against books like Saga and Batman. I mean, that's a pretty big fucking deal for, you know, one, you know, your top 5 comic books of the year, you know, and, you know, voting. Obviously, I, Vampire lost, probably by a pretty significant margin, but hey, I mean, at least it was up there, right? I mean, so, I mean, there's gotta be, you know, there's a fan base for that book, and it might not be as high as, you know, things like Batman, but, or any of the Bat titles, for that matter, or any of the Superman titles, or anything by, you know, people like Snyder or Lemire or, you know, what have you. But, you know, the only chance I think that Andrew Bennett really has at this point to stay alive in the DCU is, of course, to become a full-fledged member of JLD. And that's what I'm honestly hoping for, because that's how they, you know, that's how Lemire's keeping Frankenstein alive right now, you know, and how he's, you know, so I, you know, and obviously he's been part of the team before, so let's put him in there. Or, like I said, let's give him a Vertigo title, because this, this title can be a lot more extreme, and it can be a lot more, I mean, you can ramp up the, the language and the TNA and the gore and everything like that, and that's fine, but, obviously it has to be done with purpose, or else you're just writing, gratuitous violence, nudity, language for the sake of writing gratuitous, nudity, language, violence. It's just, that doesn't make a good book. But it does award, I think, a certain amount of freedom to the writer. So, I mean, here's where, of course, books like Superior Spider-Man, they really come under the micromanaged microscope, is that I don't think that Dan Slott wanted to put that last moment in this issue of Superior Spider-Man. I don't think he really intended to do that, because Spider-Man it's not their biggest, I mean, right now it's their biggest seller, of course, but I mean, just from a controversy angle alone, it's their #1 seller. And, the character's popularity, hasn't really waned, but it hasn't really, I mean, because you still have all the Avengers titles, and, all of those are getting rebooted, and the X-Men titles, and, some of those are getting rebooted, some of them are getting facelifts. It's like Bendis went from doing the Avengers to doing the X-Men now. And good, because at least, New Avengers have got Hickman, Secret Avengers is going to have Nick Spencer. But like I said, I mean, these books are very heavily under the microscope. They are going to be really super watched, hovered over by the editors. So, like I said, I think that this ending that Slott put in felt very forced. It was like, okay, well, what if the readers don't end up liking this series? Let's throw this moment in that gives us a way out right off the bat. So like I said, because I believe that Slott's a smarter writer than that. And I have faith that he wants to do right by the character, no matter what character he's writing. So, like I said, it's really hard to tell right now where this book is going to go, but I think it's a conversation worth having. I think it's something worth exploring, because, I mean, if we're doing anything else, this is why I don't watch a lot of too many other people's vlogs, like in one sitting, because it makes me want to do my own vlog, because it's like, okay, well, this person's sounding off on this, and I kind of miss me being out there. So that's my thing. Like I said, I'm going to put the link to the article below, and probably also a link to Travis's What the Fugue episode that he just did, because, like I said, a lot of what I'm talking about here is covered there. So I'm not going to give up on Superior Spider-Man until I see it start to go into just way too weird of a direction. And I think that's where a lot of people are. I mean, aside from of course, the diehard Spider-Man fans who are saying, fuck you to Dan Slott, and, I'm not even going to be picking up Superior Spider-Man because, you've pissed all over Peter Parker's memory, you've sullied the entire, all the great work that you've done is now completely eclipsed by this one bad thing that you've done. So, we don't trust you anymore. And I think that's, admittedly, I can understand it. I don't think it's, personally, I don't think that's the way to go. But that's me. And, you have the right to make your decisions, and I certainly respect them. So, but I won't always agree with them. So that's it for this little part-time vlog. So thanks for watching. Of course, feel free, if you're new here, to subscribe. You know, go back and see some of my other stuff. It's very long. Be afraid. If you're not into the long vlogs, you pretty much might as well just put it away. But you know, check it out. It might be worth it. It might be worth your time to you know, put some of that time in. And I do need to get in touch with just one trans fan again to see if my vlogs are still going up on not on YouTube, on iTunes. So yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe. Actually, don't feel free. I'm going to make you subscribe. Do it now. And of course, thumbs up, thumbs down, comments, feedback, give and take. That's what it's all about, people. So, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Monday night with a brand spanking new comics, bitches! So, this is James Donnelly from the Shadow Gallery saying good night to you all and reminding you, as always, to stay in the shadow.